And we're live. What anticipation this morning. Welcome to this moment with us. Carol and Lisa here, introducing you to the Diamond Mother Ring.
Welcome everyone, welcome to the Diamond Mothering. We're here to illuminate the core of the feminine force, and we are so excited to have the beautiful Alison Canavan with us here this evening. Alison is just a shining diamond from Ireland originally, and she's a really inspirational lady, especially to me. You've got a special place in my heart, Alison, and I'll explain later on to people why. She's not only a supermodel, but she's also a mindfulness coach, international speaker, and author. She's got many beautiful talents, and she's really we would have selected her because she's an example of the beautiful feminine force in the world, and also she's setting this beautiful example that we call supermodeling to the generation behind us, you know, to her as she's mothering in the world, and how she sets that example to the younger generation. So we've selected her especially for that reason, Alison. I'm so delighted to have you here with us tonight.
Oh, thank you so much, Caroline and Lisa. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited for this amazing chat, and well done to both of you for creating such a wonderful idea and community at this time. There is really no better time. I was actually just saying this morning, I was talking to a lot of teenagers moving into young adults at the moment. My practice usually is women of 30 and above. Always. It just always has been, especially the last couple of years. And recently it has been the younger generation, because of everything that's been happening and because of what they're experiencing and the anxiety. So there's no better time for a community like this. It's so needed. So thank you to both of you for creating this.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm so interested to hear your story of transformation. You know, obviously when, I guess, you know, looking at I was just reading over your bio and thinking, wow, what an incredible journey, and what a contrast from being in the world of supermodeling to being into this world of mindfulness. I should imagine it's a contrast. Never been a supermodel myself, but I should imagine there'd be a pretty big difference. So we'd love to hear about it.
Yeah, there certainly is. It's kind of night and day. I mean, the modeling industry is the furthest thing from the mindfulness industry. It's like they're two opposite ends of the spectrum. You couldn't get further apart. It's interesting though. I mean, I started modeling at so young. I was 15, you know? And I even remember now, and it's funny because my son is 11 and he's asking a lot of questions now that he wouldn't have asked before. So I'm really going down this kind of memory lane recently, which is really interesting with him. And we were watching a show on TV and he's like, is that what you used to do, Mom? And actually there's still some boxes at home in my sister's house with all my old photos and everything, things that he wasn't interested in. And I'm like, oh, I wish I had those boxes to show you. Yeah. But when I was 15, I didn't feel like I was 15. No 15-year-old does, right? We feel like we're 25, you know, because we're always kind of trying to be older than we are. But so many of my friends have kids now, like James is 11. When I say that, I feel like, oh my God, I still think he's 3. And like getting closer to that age. And so many of my friends' daughters and so many of my friends' sons are that age now. I'm thinking, not in a fit would I let them, or would I let them go off into the world of modeling? Like when I think about it, I'm like, oh my gosh. So I was 15 when I entered a competition in Ireland and I won that. And that was to go to Nevs in the UK. And I did Tony and Guy campaigns. They're big hair salons. I think they have Tony and Guy in Australia as well, actually. And I actually spent time in Sydney modeling as well. And then I entered and I won the Ford Supermodel of the world. And I represented Ireland in that then, in Las Vegas when I was 16. And that was really the beginning where my eyes just got opened. I presented entertainment TV for that with Cindy Crawford then, actually, because I remember I couldn't step into the casino areas because I wasn't 21, and she was doing that. And I was just very chatty. So it wasn't something that was organized. I was an Irish girl, very chatty, very interested. And the guys were like, would you like to do some of the presenting and ask questions? And I was like, okay. Didn't really give it too much thought, you know. And that kind of kickstarted my career. I went straight to Paris after that and started modeling, started doing all the fashion shows, went to Paris, went to London at every school holiday. And when I finished secondary school, I went straight to London and moved. And I traveled all the time to Germany, London, down to Spain, worked in Portugal a lot, all over, ended up living in South Africa, Australia for a while, went to New Zealand for one job and ended up staying for a month and doing so much work in New Zealand. Like there's been some amazing surprises for me, you know, like when I went to New Zealand and in Auckland, there was the most astonishing community of creative people I've ever met. And I had such a wonderful time there.
Yeah.
And then I moved to New York and I spent a decade in New York. And that was really my base. And I traveled all over the States, like doing all their big stores like JCPenney's, dealers. It's funny, every store we pass now in the States, when we are going in, I'm like, oh, mommy used to do that. Mommy used to do that.
James was like, who? What do you mean? You just make the dinner.
Now, I mean, when we were living in Ireland, because we've been back in the States 2 years, when we were living in Ireland, he was reared in radio stations and in TV stations because I would always be doing interviews. But it didn't really mean anything to him then. So when I was in London in my late teens, I developed an interest in meditation and never told anyone because, you know, people would have thought you were off the wall then, you know, because there was no outlet for meditation. And I started going to the Buddhist Center in East London. Then when I moved to New York in my mid-20s, I lived across from an Irish guy, actually, who gifted me beautiful books about loving kindness, compassion, all based in the Buddhist traditions, and invited me downtown to listen to this guy called Kadam Morton speak. He's still the head of the Kadampa Buddhist Center, actually, in New York. It's funny because when I started going, it was this tiny little room on the third floor. It was on the west side. And a few years ago, I went back just to see if they were still there. They're in this huge big place, like it's unbelievable. It's the most amazing place I've ever seen. And I was like, whoa, to watch how businesses grow. But he took me there, and that teacher, he was such a wonderful teacher because he helped me make sense of life in New York. I think you're a brilliant teacher if you can help people to connect to what's going on in their life every day. So I used to go there every Wednesday, and I'd leave feeling like I had some sense of the world, or I was like, yeah, I get it, you know, and then that would wear off pretty quickly. And that cycle was kind of going on for quite a while. I would find some kind of sense of peace and grounding and then lose it very quickly again. But I also used to go on retreats at the weekends, and like, I'm very extremist. So like if I was going on a retreat, it would be a silent retreat, and I'd be in the kitchen and I'd be like peeling 10,000 carrots with nuns, you know, nothing like going straight from New York to this kind of retreat where everything's very simplified and very strict, actually. And I would spend 3 days doing that. And even though it would be difficult, I'd come back to New York feeling kind of, but I'd just go back to my old life again, which was partying, modeling and traveling. And there was this disconnect with, why don't I feel good? And I had chronic anxiety and like depression, and I didn't feel good in myself, and my self-esteem would have been suffering. So there was this knowing, there was this force pulling me towards my inner self, but there was a disconnect to what was really required of me. That consciousness and that awareness, it just wasn't there yet in me. And then when I moved home to Ireland, when I had my son, I was looking for a similar Buddhist place to meditate. And I actually ended up seeing that Sagyong Rinpoche was talking in Dagshinbear in the west of Ireland. Now, to put that into context, I picked up a book when my father passed away when I was 21 called The Tibetan Book of Living and Dying. It's not like an easy read. Like, at all. It's
extreme again.
Exactly. it was very interesting. That book really helped me make sense of my father passing away. It was the first book that really dove deep into death. Like nobody really talks about death, you know? So we have a terrible fear around death. And then in turn, when we lose someone close to us, we don't really know how to cope. You know?
That's right.
No, people don't really talk about it either. So I was 21. My dad was my rock. My mom was great, but she didn't really know anything. It was my dad that knew everything that was going on in the industry. And he was always like, don't tell your mother, you know, for fear of her freaking out and everything. And so I really felt like just so alone in the world when he passed away. And I found that difficult. So I went down to Doug Shimbera, and Sagya Rinpoche ended up being my teacher for the next 7 years.
Wow.
And he was a very tough teacher. And excuse my language, but he took no shit. And that's exactly what I needed. I was deeply entrenched in a victim consciousness, and he just wasn't having any of it. He was just like, this goes right back to you. This goes right. And I used to leave getting really frustrated, you know. I had some seismic and powerful shifts during those years, and really understanding the root cause of my trauma and what was really going on with me, and the power of consistency and showing up for myself in my practice. So very long story short, even though I was in the fashion industry, everything I have experienced has led me to this path to truly understand working with people. You can't really work with people until you've been there yourself. That's just for me personally. I don't think so. And to experience this world for well over a couple of decades, where everybody thinks if I just had that for 5 minutes, I would be so happy and all my problems would go away. And I rarely met a famous person who was happy. Like in all those years, in all the supermodels I met, in all the famous actors, all the famous celebrities, it was rare I came across someone who was peaceful, calm, and happy. You know, they were usually partying, you know, just didn't have a sense of self, looking for the next hit, you know, being famous, never being famous enough. And really, I'm so grateful for those years, because I learned that the grass is not greener. And that's been the greatest gift that industry gave me, is that yearning inside where, you know, I don't go around thinking if I had this or if I was them. Like I look at them and I go, oh, thank God I'm not in that industry anymore. So that's a little bit of a guidance to how I am, where it got to where I am today. And I suppose education-wise, I started to study food, first of all, because I noticed, you know, the destructive relationships most people around me had with food, and how most of the girls didn't eat, girls dying from food disorders, you know, bulimia, throwing up backstage at shows, fainting because they didn't have any food in them. And I studied nutrition for many years and began to realize food's not the problem. It's emotions. It's emotions. And you're limited in your training to what you can say and do, right? So I couldn't really say anything about, even though my natural intuition was, I know exactly what's going on here, but I can't say, like, to tell you what to eat. Like, it was really So then I went on to do more training, and I did coaching training and became a master NLP practitioner. I was looking at my wall, HeartMath coach, and then I got a scholarship to UCLA to study mindfulness, the Semel Institute of Neuroscience, and then I'm studying at the Life Change Mastery Institute and the Brave Thinking Institute. And so it, you know, my training has kind of been a natural progression into knowing that there's a more holistic approach that needs to take place. Like, it's not about what somebody eats. What somebody's choosing to eat has 100% got to do with how they feel in themselves. You know, it's like the choices we make have got to do with our emotional state. So, yeah, and here we are today, nearly 40 years of age.
Wow, Alison, what an amazing story. It's fabulous to hear like that arc of experience. You know, I absolutely loved you sharing, and thank you so much for sharing it in such detail. Like, there's so much gems there to kind of unpack. But it's funny actually when I listen to you, because like, you know, the connection that myself and Alison have is actually from the Rainbow Warrior children's book that I wrote. And you know, we're always trying to teach like the feminine force here and the intuition. So like, I was actually just in my kitchen and I was just after publishing the book, and I just got an image of you in my head, you know, and I was like, oh, I had just an image, wasn't really sure exactly. I was like, okay, and I just Googled you. I said, oh, Alison, she's in Ireland. Okay, she lives in America now. Oh, maybe she might like this book. And I sent it to you. And actually, I didn't even realize that you had a weekly write-up in the Times in Ireland. You were telling me I'm going to pick it as book of the week. And I was like, oh, book of the week. Oh, okay. That's lovely. Great. But, it was kind of like, I feel like there was a connection with you. And actually, when I hear your story now, I can understand like a little bit of like my journey reflected in the fact that I went into branding. I always had that kind of connection and, creativity. And then I was very intense like that as well. Went out of Ireland and kind of traveled a lot. I went to Scotland and got into, branding and worked for top brands across the globe, from a very early age in a very male industry kind of thing as well. And like that, the same things were like, obviously with modeling, it's a lot, more intensified, we'll say, but the same kind of, feeling of the, it's a creative industry, but a lot of kind of toxic culture as well, that can be there. And you've got this creativity and this kind of inner knowing, but it's kind of not really fitting with the environment and the culture that's there. And you're kind of suffering because of it as such, and, you're knowing that there's another way to go and trying to follow that kind of thing, and then kind of going back but I went into education then, and I was studying, in design thinking and lecturing and stuff. And then I actually was called into the west of Ireland to a retreat into the cottage, and I bought a cottage there, and I started doing this kind of inner work. But it was kind of like, I didn't have my teacher was within, so it was an internal teaching that was happening, and the kind of an uncovering of myself, but then looking at consciousness across the whole of humanity as a research project, kind of as if I was put into research. This is a big project we have to get you to look at, and then starting to study mindfulness and neuroscience as well, and then coming out, and then the Rainbow Warrior was the first thing that I wrote, and then I sent it to you, and then it's so amazing to hear you on that journey as well, like coming back to just realizing the same thing, and about emotions, and about, for me as well, it's about getting children back into, supporting them as well, and their mums into kind of, connecting into their true intelligence, and pushing forward with this beautiful innovation that we need to come to the world to solve the problems that we have now, and to kind of give people that empowerment, and get their insights working, so they're going to be working from insight all the time,
It's so beautiful what you said there. Their true intelligence. I've actually never heard anyone say that before. That's so beautiful, because it is their own innate intelligence, their natural knowing that they're connecting with. That, like, we lead kids away in this world from their intuition at such a young age. We put them into schools where every time they have an opinion, they're told, no, wrong answer. But I feel this way. No, it doesn't matter what you feel. This is what it is. And so no wonder we mistrust ourselves at such a young age. And probably like a really important part of my story as well is I'm in recovery 7 years. So entering the fashion industry, not really feeling, like, who at 15, when you're surrounded by the most beautiful people in the world, has like loads of confidence, So of course, alcohol and partying, and it's like, whoa, free confidence, And in the early days, that's like, when we talk about emotions, I mean, you're drinking to numb, to self-soothe, because you can't self-regulate, and because you don't know how to self-soothe naturally. That's why we do what we do. We use things inside of us, And so the greatest gift that we can give our kids is to really stay with their emotions, to be present in your body, to understand that life means you have to embrace every emotion that comes their way, and to not fear anger, disappointment, sadness, to understand that they're all equal and welcome to the party. And I think that's the most important thing. Like, when James is sad, I say, it's okay to be sad. It's just part of being a human being. The sadness is trying to tell you something, and be with the sadness and allow it to pass. But once it's communicated with you and you understand, really my problems came from I don't even remember, and I don't point fingers at anybody in my family, because our parents do the best with what they were given, and and so on and so forth. So we're kind of just hoping to screw our kids up a bit less, maybe.
Yes.
We were,
or in a different way, just slightly different.
like, I don't think nobody's got it all figured out, right? But it is interesting because I don't remember, like when we think about today, you know, I'm constantly telling my child I love him. I'm constantly asking him how he is. I'm constantly asking those questions, and they're very normal conversations between us. I don't ever remember anybody asking me a question like that when I was young. Certainly not as a teenager. I don't even know what I would have done if someone asked me something like that. I would have been like, I don't know. But because of that, what I realized is that I had so much repressed emotions, you know, which caused depression, first of all, because depression is a lack of expression. It's in there, it's repressed, it's inside us. And I remember as a teenager feeling unable to express anything that was going on. Like in my head, I kind of could feel it and know it, but it was kind of impossible for it to come from my mouth. Like I remember being in a relationship and my boyfriend was asking me, what is going on? Let me help you. And literally paralyzed from a community. You wouldn't know now, right? Could not communicate how I was feeling. So everything, it was like being trapped in my body. I was just so sad all the time. And then I had chronic anxiety going on as well, which is really interesting. And then I drank, gone for a while.
Yeah.
You know, so I found this kind of, and then being in the fashion industry, sure, it's like, if you're in any way, you know, stuck or not feeling good about yourself, it's literally the worst industry to go into because it's like a spiral, you know, and you will be fed whatever you want. It doesn't matter if it's good or bad for you. You know, you want it, you have it, and for free. You know, that's the thing. And so at 15, you're invited to the most glamorous, most amazing parties. You've got the most gorgeous clothes. You're traveling all around the world. And so you're kind of getting away with these behaviors that you would never get away with if I was back at home. Like you just wouldn't, you know, but everybody around you is doing the same thing. So there's the justification that comes with that. It's like, well, I'm not doing it on my own. Everybody around me is doing the same thing.
Yeah.
But it's a very difficult place to get out of. And when you talked about when you went to the west of Ireland to your cottage and your teacher was your own inner guidance, that's really what happened to me 7 years ago when I went into recovery this time. I did it on my own. And it's, you know, that can be quite controversial to say in the world of AA and everything. I spent 10 years in AA in New York and never got sober. That's nothing to do with AA. That has 100% got to do with me. I take full responsibility.
Yeah.
I had any intention of getting sober either. But it's interesting this time because of the work I was doing and also because of my deep faith and trust.
Yes. Trust.
There was a lot more going on. I was able to go, okay, so what do I need in this moment? Now, I will say prayer and meditation are the two things that I absolutely cannot live without. You know, they're so important to me. And having that deep sense of faith and that deep sense of connection for me is what really keeps me grounded. You know, it's what keeps me going on a daily basis. And it's one of the most, I think, the generations now, you know, in Ireland, we were brought up with the Catholic religion, which was forced down our neck in a way that was quite unsavory. And so people have turned away from any kind of faith. And I think that's a huge part of the problem we're seeing now with young people. They've no guidance system. They've no faith, you know, and it's like without faith, for me, your life just becomes directionless. It becomes purposeless. You know, you have a sense of faith.
Alison, it's so important that point, because I see that in Ireland especially, and that, you know, we, because of the issues that we've had around religion, it's caused that suppression in ourselves. But yet we're so deeply spiritual as a race that we're in this mental health crisis because of the fact we feel we've lost our faith, you know, and like, you know, but I feel that this time now is like the start of a renaissance in spirituality, you know, and it's just a true spirituality, and it's actually a maturing of our spirituality into like a direct relationship with self, so that it's like the dying away of the religious kind of I suppose, in the psyche, that has to be done. And I think actually that was 7 years ago when I went to the cottage too. And a lot of the work has to be done is around the kind of the guilt complex that's left behind from, like, you know, our conditioning, deep conditioning around Catholicism in Ireland as well. Like, and I'm just speaking to Ireland just now because you know the experience, Alison, and it does have a profound effect on children. And even now I can see how it causes massive anxiety because it is suppressing emotions, you know, and it's also in any other culture across even the States as well. You can see it's denying people's natural intelligence to come to blossom and to flourish, you know. And so, like, that's why I really feel like that. And I loved what you said about the radical kind of the teacher that you had, where he kind of broke that open, because it nearly needs something so strong like that to break that type of conditioning open. And I think it's through the mums doing that work, so will help the children. And that's why we're trying to create this kind of global movement around that, because it will happen quicker in community, you know, and the more people that can talk to exactly what you're saying, you know. And it's amazing that you got to the stage that, you know, it's like as if there's this height that people want to get to in their minds, that, you know, they're going to be happy. But when you got to that point, you couldn't have done any better. You know what I mean? You had everything at your disposal, and then you realize still you have to go within to find that kind of inner peace and do the inner work, you know. So it's just an amazing story.
I'd love to just pull the gems in from what you've both said here, because I'm just like, it's like ding, 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 ding all over the place. Like I heard, Alison, when you were saying that your experience was what was important. And I think, you know, for Carolyn, we talk about this all the time. We're in a world that feeds us so much information. We can touch and get anything we need to know at any point. And yet it's pretty clear that actually is not helping us find the way forward and find the solutions that we're really looking for to feel empowered in ourselves. And I think that just goes to show it's our experience that we have that brings us to our true intelligence. It's the experience that we have that allows us to really sit in presence with other people. And yet we're not taught how to be in that experience, because in order for us to be in that presence, we have to feel very comfortable in ourselves, and we have to have value. And this is what you're saying, Carolyn. This is about the valuing of our experience. Our culture does not value experience. It values degrees, titles, information. If you can relearn information and you can spit it out and you're really good at that, then you are right up there on the top rung. For me, the experience is, you know, like, hey, if we're drowning in the ocean, I don't really want someone that's read a book about saving somebody from drowning. I want someone that's actually saved some people, right? But the thing is, what we're here to bridge now is, yes, this experience is what it's all about. It's us being in the experience of our lives and valuing the experience, because we're not even taught to value it. And to do that, we have to be able to understand our emotions and work with them. And Ali, your way through meditation and prayer is, you know, like that, getting in touch with, well, how do I feel? And like a lot of people that I work with, it's like not even really knowing how to feel what you feel. Like you're feeling something, right? But you're like, what is this? And at 37, I had to learn. Like, I thought I knew because I had it in my head. I could analyze it. I would tell you that I was emotional. But I actually really had not got in touch with the feeling in my body, you know, and that, you know, that feeling, I think you can get that through meditation. And I, like Dr. Erin has asked, how can we start learning how to meditate? And it's as simple, right? And I noticed, Ellie, you've done heart breath as well. It's as simple as that, just breathing into your heart for a few minutes.
Yeah. Just get like going into that stillness, into that silence. I don't think there's any other way, you know. There's no shortcuts. We can try. Listen, I've tried to take all the shortcuts. So take me, they don't work. And you know, there's no get. Like I was saying to someone yesterday, one of my clients, you know, consistency is key. And I'll come back to the meditation in a minute because it's important when we talk about consistency. It's what we do most often that creates the patterns in our life. And that was a really key understanding for me. And if we're not consistent in our inquiry, like when you were saying, Lisa, there were so many gems in what you were saying as well. saying something like, I'm emotional, which, by the way, when you said that there, I'm like, oh my God, I used to say that all the time.
Yes.
And actually, my family used to label me that as well. Oh, she's very emotional. Like, she's very emotional. Like, what does that even mean?
Yeah.
Does
Yes.
it mean like we don't understand her and we don't know what to do with her, so we're just going to call it emotional?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
When
Yeah.
we dig a bit deeper, and it's like, so I used to say all the time, oh God, I'm just very emotional. But what that meant is I haven't a clue what's going on. Like,
I'm feeling something, but I don't
Yeah.
really know what it is. I don't even know what feelings are.
Yeah. And for me, it was just, for so many years when I was meditating, like for so many years, I tried really hard to meditate. Like, and I'm talking like for quite a long time, like 10, 12 years. And then when Sagyong Rinpoche became my teacher, he said to me one day, how are you getting on? How are you getting on with your practice? I can see you're struggling a bit. Like, you could visibly see when I was sitting in meditation that there was obviously some kind of inner narrative that was visible. But I'm like a little war with myself. And he said, what's going on? And I said, I just can't silence my mind. And he said to me, well, you're not dead. It took a moment for me to kind of go, what does he mean by that? And what he was saying was, the only way to completely silence everything and turn your mind off is if you're not here anymore. And I thought, oh my gosh, like that moment changed. It was that moment in time that changed the trajectory of everything for me. Because now meditation, I made very hard work. Like, I had it on my list. I had to do it. It was a chore. It was not something that I enjoyed doing. Now I cherish sitting in silence for 20 minutes. For me, it's like, oh my gosh, something I really look forward to. But for somebody who's like, where do I start? I would start really small. Because if you're not used to sitting alone with yourself in silence, it can be very overwhelming, because when we sit by ourselves and we enter that space, that silence, you're not in control of what comes up. Whatever's there is going to come up, good or bad. And that's the reason why a lot of people don't like sitting by themselves. They don't like sitting in silence because they're unsure of opening this can of worms from within. And will I be able to cope? And do I really want to let these emotions come to the surface? Well, the fact of the matter is, if you don't allow them to come to the surface and deal with them in this way and meditate and be with yourself in that way, they are going to manifest in some form of dis-ease. Like, the word dis-ease just means that we're at a dis-ease with ourselves in mind, body, or spirit. So for me, meditation is the greatest medicine, because it allows us to really sit and just be with ourselves. But the thing about it is, with openness and curiosity. Like, so we're not sitting in judgment. And if something comes up that's uncomfortable, we're not saying, oh, go back, stop. We're just being with whatever is happening in this moment. And that is the true pathway to growth, because very often we're trying to be everything that we're not in this moment. We're trying to be happier, or, when we're happier, we want to stay there. We don't want to be sad, so we're always kind of fighting with ourselves. We're never just happy just being where we are. And that's why meditation, we're training to be what we call equanimous. We're training in equanimity. So when we do Vipassana training, it's so that we don't lean too much into our cravings or aversions. Now, when you do 10-day silent retreats, you're meditating for 9.5 hours a day in silence. You're not allowed to speak to anybody. You're not allowed to make eye contact, and you're not allowed to even give hand gestures. Zero communication in any form. No phones, no writing materials, no books, no nothing. Just you and your mind. Very interesting. So my first ever was like where I really was trying to understand this equanimity. What is this? Having an equanimous mind, just being with whatever's happening. And I remember what it's trying to teach us is that the law of nature states that everything changes. Everything is constantly in a state of change, and it's changing. And what you're doing in Vipassana is you're scanning your body up and down for 9.5 hours a day. And I remember getting this pain in my lungs, and different organs relate to different emotions, and our lungs are grief. Our liver is anger. our kidneys are fear. So I remember having this, it was the only way I can describe it. I kept going up to the teacher. It was like a solidified rock that was in my lung, in my left lung. And I was crying and I kept saying to her, you don't understand. It's not going. Like I was kind of trying to say to her, I'm telling you the law of nature is not the law of nature. And of course, someone is a wise teacher of the past and there for like 40 years. And she's like, okay, if you wouldn't mind just going back and sitting on your cushion and just, continuing.
Being with us.
Like, I'm the one person that's going to tell you that like this is not working. And it just seemed to, over the days, intensify and intensify to the point that my breathing was like even shortened because of it. Like I was in so much physical pain, and it was day 8. Now that's a very long time. It was
a lot of pain.
That I was starting to doing my meditation, and I started to feel it like start to dissolve, and the excitement within me. Oh my God, I got so excited. I was sitting in meditation. I was like, I've never been so excited about anything in my life. And I felt it dissolve. And in that moment, I was like, this is what she's talking about, the law of nature. Everything changes. It will eventually dissolve. And I felt it dissolve and dissolve and dissolve over time. And then it just went away. And I felt this free-flowing energy, which was unbelievable. I was just so excited, and I was sitting there. And of course, what happened to me then? I was like, I want to feel like this forever. I do not want to go back.
Yes.
It was immediately what happened. And what happened when I went there? The pain came back.
Oh,
back.
Oh my God.
Now I understand equanimity. So it was really, it's about learning about attachment, not getting too attached to the good things. Yes. And then when we're experiencing the bad things, not wishing for them to never happen again. So it's very interesting training, and all of this training can only be done experientially. Like I can sit and talk about this, but it's only when we sit and we have a 10, 20-minute meditation practice every day, and we see that every single day is different. Because let's face it, if I stir water today, we're getting stirred up at a different rate every day. Some days we stir ourselves vigorously and we're really stressed and overwhelmed. And when we go into meditation, it takes us a long time to settle, but we're impatient, right? So it's like, well, yesterday I sat for 20 minutes and I had a lovely meditation, but today I'm not able to. So we start to notice what we're doing in our everyday life, because that's what meditation is teaching us, how we're actually responding and reacting in the real world. And so that's the beauty of the practice, is when you sit and practice and you start to realize how impatient you are, how uncomfortable you are, how I don't want to be in this skin today, or some days you go, oh, it's actually just really nice to have some space. And every day is different. It's different. But one thing,
you're building a relationship with yourself, aren't you? Like you're actually getting to know you and having this relationship with yourself, which like the majority of us were never taught to do, which is so bizarre.
Isn't it? Because I always say, like, think about it. The only relationship that you will have from birth till death is the one with yourself. Because we get birthed into parents and a family. We grow up in that family and we leave home. You know, we might get married, we might have children, we go to college, we live with different people, we have different partners through our time. But the only relationship that's from birth till death is the one you have with yourself. Does it not make sense to work on the relationship that's consistent and constant? And as bringing it back to parenting, if we don't work on that relationship, like so many parents come to me and say, I can't get my kids to eat this, I can't get them to behave a certain way. Well, I started giving up that when James was very young. You know, am I doing everything right? I'm a single mom. I'm still a single mom, 11 years in. And my entry into parenting, talk about, Caroline, you were talking about transmuting the guilt and shame that's in our very DNA, by the way. Same in Australia, you know, it's in our DNA. And if it's not healed the generation before, it's passed through each generation, and we're still carrying that trauma until somebody decides to do the work, you know, and then the healing begins for 7 generations before, 7 generations behind. And it's so important to understand this concept, because so many parents are trying to get their kids to perform and behave according to what they want. Well, how are you behaving?
Yeah.
What are you modeling? Are you eating all those healthy foods that you're asking them to eat? Are you modeling this behavior of, you know, showing up for yourself and committing to what you said you're going to do? Like, we miss the boat when we don't model that. So James grew up thinking everybody meditates. He came back from a play date and said, Mom, I don't think such and such as mom meditates. Like, he was really
Like this different world, like, oh, yeah.
I mean, to him it was like abnormal. So
yes,
he was like,
not to.
I don't think she does. And I thought, my God, what an amazing world that would be.
Yes.
If that's what was normality. But normality is what we do most often.
Yeah.
Normality. So he was reared with a mom. The only time I meditated every morning before he woke. Some days I got 5 minutes, some days I got 10, some days I got 20 minutes, depending on when he woke up. So when he woke up in the morning, he would always see me meditating, because that's how I started my day. So that was just a very normal thing that he remembers from growing up. And it's still just very normal. I mean, I've sound bows inside. And James, as soon as he sits down, he plays the sound bows as if they're the most normal things in the world.
Yeah. Wonderful. That's amazing.
They model our behavior. So, you know, how are you showing up? What behavior are you modeling to your kids? And the healing that parents do naturally benefits the kids. We don't even have to show the kids anything. The healing that we do, they see it, they feel it. Our central nervous system mirrors our kids' central nervous system. Like, I know when James is overwhelmed and stressed, the first thing I do is go, how am I? How am I doing? Because he's responding to my central nervous system right now. So sometimes I don't feel stressed because I have, unfortunately, a high threshold for stress, but I'm naturally have a tendency towards anxiety and stress. It's kind of a normal zone for me. That doesn't mean it's right or healthy. But when I see him getting overwhelmed, the first place I come now is, oh, how am I really doing? And then I go, in reality, I'm actually kind of overwhelmed. And the HeartMath, put that in my ear, you see those erratic heart lines? That's a very quick indicator to how I'm really doing.
That's brilliant. I love that, Alison, because I always think it's like, you know, we're creating, you know, people talk about the environment, you know, so what about the environment that you're creating in your home, like with, you know, your body, like what your body is emanating, you know, like this, you know, and I was thinking of, you know, what's the true relationship, you know, and when you're bringing in kind of expectation into your home, it's like breaking that sustainable relationships, you know. So like I like to think of it like that, because I know in the environment as well, like the larger global environment, the compounding effect that has across the globe, you know, it is the only way that we can kind of really change things on a faster kind of stage, because it's a state change, you know, that we're trying to.
So many people, it's so interesting you say that, because so many people say to me, you know, when we hit different stages in our life where we just feel fed up, or we come to a stage where we feel, what's the point? You know, what's the point in me doing the work? Like, who's really going to benefit? And I'm always saying to people, every single human being that decides to do the work, that decides to really go inwards and heal, creates a whole different consciousness and reality for the entire world. Like, don't think that the light that you're bringing to this world doesn't have a huge effect. I mean, I think it's, a friend of mine was saying, for every single person that's awake and truly shining their light, it affects over 100,000 people who are not, who are asleep. It carries them, it lifts them. But it's actually from a vibrational level. Like, when you raise your own energy, when you're working on yourself, if we look at the world as a big vibrational sounding board, we're trying to raise the vibration of humanity in general. So we need every single person to do the work, you know, because the more people that do the work, the quicker we rise. The quicker we rise out of this. And you know, when you walk into a room and somebody walks in who just is like down and low, you can feel it. Now, if you have to make over your energy, it doesn't necessarily affect you. But you also know when someone walks in and they light up the whole room, you can feel that too, right? And it's like, walked in and her energy was just gorgeous and so expansive. So we all have that power and that potential. And imagine teaching that to our children.
And I think too, what you were saying before, I just have to draw this little going back and bringing this moment into when you're saying, we are saying to our kids, we love you, we are saying to our kids, you know, there's a lot more awareness. But what I think we need to be really, really conscious of right now, it's like who we are being in this moment. It's not just about what we're doing or what we're saying. It's like, where are we coming from? What is our motive? And how are we being in this moment? Because we can say all that stuff, but unless we're in that vibration, unless we're really understanding what we're bringing to this moment. You know, I had an experience with my daughter, like talking about trust, and she was saying something that I knew for her, and I shouldn't say it like that, but her understanding what she wanted for herself, given the culture that was coming in, I could feel that she was just wanting it because this is what she was being told by the culture. Now, interestingly, when I very gently went around it, because I was validating her, you know, what it was, and she said to me, Mum, well, this is what I need for myself right now, you know, and I need to trust myself. And I thought she gave me a gem in that moment, right? Because if I had jumped into that moment and gone, no, then I'm doing exactly what you said before. I would have been undermining her own trust in herself. But what you're saying, Ali, is so true. It's for us. We need to be in this place where we can be in the emerging flow with our daughters and just support them and validate them, because it does always work out, right? There's this moment. It's the thing that stops it from working out is when I'm reacting or when I'm trying to control the situation.
Yeah. You know, so, like we're so, because we feel out of control ourselves, we have a tendency to try and control what's going on around us, which is other people. And you'll see that when parents or anybody just doesn't feel safe in their own skin and doesn't really know where they're going. Or you said just a little bit earlier, you were talking about values, Lisa. When we don't truly know our values or our why or what we're doing in this world, we have a tendency to try and fix everyone and everything around us. And that's when you see the control happen and the battles begin to happen, because our kids actually do know if we give them a chance to communicate with us. Like James said to me in the supermarket the other day, were we in the supermarket? No, we were actually at a memorial at the weekend. And we were up and we were in line and it was a buffet afterwards. And I think I had said to him 2 or 3 times, because he was like, I'm not really hungry. I don't want anything to eat. And of course, I'm thinking, well, I don't want to cook when I go home. You eat something now because it's a 2-hour drive to get home. And if you do it now, like, you're not going to eat for the rest of the day. So, of course, there's me just thinking about me, right? We're going along the line, and I was saying, just try some of this, just try a little bit. Like, I know you don't like this, but I think you might like this. And I'm like, Mummy, I'll put a little bit on her plate, and then you can try a bit of mine. And we sat down at the table, and he turned around to me and he said, Mom, can you please take me at my first word?
Oh my God, I get that.
And I sat there and just went, well, here's a real learning moment for me as a mom as he begins to get older. Because who am I to say that he wasn't hungry or he really didn't want that? Like, I was the child who hated when anybody put something on me. Like, literally, you tell me to go left and I'll go right just because you tell me to go left. That's it. Super simple. So in that moment, I just took a deep breath and I sat back and I was kind of a mixture of admiration and kind of like being annoyed at myself. I was like, I'm super proud that he was able to verbalize and talk to me and say, please listen to me when I say something. It's like he said, I said it 3 times. And then I was just like, wow, this is a real moment for me to kind of understand that he is that bit older. He doesn't want this. He doesn't want this. So, but without my mindfulness training, without my awareness training, that moment would have been very different. It would have been more like my mother and me moment is, well, you will just do as you're told. And let me tell you, how dare you speak to me like that? And you will eat your dinner. And that's how I was reared.
It sounds very common, and actually that's a very same, I've had that conversation. It's funny you said about food. I tend to do that as well. It must be an Irish thing as well, because I know I get told, and
it's not an Irish thing, it's a mother thing.
Is it? Yeah, because it's like, you know, I try and rephrase it in many different ways. You know, it's like, oh, you like this now, but you wouldn't like it. Would you like it now if I put this on it, or put that on it, or look at this? And they're like, Mom, can you hear yourself?
Yeah.
You've just said the same thing to me in 5 different ways, and I still don't want to see it, you know? And I'm like, Oh my God, I just heard myself. Thank you so much. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Because I thought, like I wasn't hungry 5 minutes ago and I'm still not hungry now, it's controlling, but it's great to have that feedback, as I call it,
And it's like just listening to our kids. They do have a voice. I mean, how many of us don't feel listened to anyway? Yes. Like just a person as an adult in this world. I mean, I think the most frequent thing I hear from clients is I do not feel seen, heard, or validated. Those three things. Whether it's people come to me and they want to change their job, what's really going on? I don't feel validated. I don't feel like people are using me correctly at work. I don't feel seen in my marriage. I don't feel seen, with my friends. I don't feel like my friends even know me or know what's going on. So it's something I hear all day, every day. So because that's the way society is, if we don't bring awareness to this, we're naturally the next generation is going to feel the same. I don't feel seen, heard, or validated. Look what's going on in the world at the moment with kids. They're the last people at the moment who seem to have, they don't have a voice, seemingly, because they're being left out. But, it's like, we got to start fighting for our kids. We've got to start fighting for the next generation, and we've got to start listening to them, because believe it or not, they do actually know what they want.
And the thing is, the only way they can do that is when we're emotionally stable ourselves. That's the problem. Yes. You see, you can't let a child needs to express themselves in their truth. So, but they have to have a parent who is secure emotionally enough in themselves to be able to hear that, to hear those and allow those big emotions to come up, because they're going to come up as they happen. For us, when they came up, they were pushed down. So then it's kind of when you allow them to come up, it's for children. It's it's unconditional love you're trying to create an atmosphere of, so like no matter what comes up in them, that they're going to be accepted. So that's it's the only way, really, isn't it, to kind of allow them to be at home in themselves and have their true voice, and so they're not going to spend 30 years trying to work that out.
And that goes on to even relationships, that just really being able to truly accept that other person that's in this place with me has their own journey, and that I might not like it, or I might think they could do better, but that's none of my business. It's like, and that is so coming back to trust as well, like just trusting this flow that's working through us, trusting ourselves, trusting our true intelligence, to be able to sit in that place. Well, that's her journey. And like you said, Ellie, who am I to say that she should be doing her journey differently? And that's the same for our partners or whoever is in our life. It's like, who are we to say that they should be doing their journey differently? Maybe they need to experience that to get to where they need to go next, And that does take emotional presence, right? You need to know yourself to be able to not have an emotional reaction to that.
Yeah, and what we're trying to teach kind of is, that the emergent design process. So in the moment, there's a learning and co-creation with both the mother and the child. So the mother, whatever's coming up in the mother in that activation with the child is the healing for the mom, but is also the self-expression for the child. So in the moment, then it's like the engines are two cogs working together. So it's like that has the kind of dynamo effect then of an emergence for the mom to be revealed, and then the emergence for the child to be revealed in the same moment. So it's kind of that beautiful kind of intuitive innovation that will kind of birth that new age, that is kind of, it's emerging, the design process of life itself emerging in the moment, and there is a kind of there is a very creative force behind that. I feel is kind of more potent in this time, this year. And I think like for spirituality is taking on a different flavor. It's not so much about, I suppose, maybe moving towards more active spirituality, like bringing like people that have been on the path for many years and have had done the meditation, practice, like you talked about, Ali, for a long time. I think that are going to be more active in the world and have larger roles in the world, that will start moving into enlightened leadership roles and starting to come out of the kind of the kind of softness of what meditation is known to be into more active, very strong voices in the world. So that's what we're trying to activate in the feminine force field. So it's not just the feminine leaders coming to take their place as well in the world, not so much, and just the kind of soft, I suppose, identity that spirituality has, but like it's time for them to become and take place in society, in leadership, and in to make change in the higher levels of the world.
Wow, that was so beautifully said. I'm just like, Carolyn, it was just like so beautiful the way you said that, because it's true. This is where we're at on this planet, and I think we have a choice now, and I think it's beautiful that there's so much awareness around the necessity for growth in most people, and it's like now we need to fully integrate everything. We need to fully integrate the way we feel and learn about that, because our culture has very well kept us separate from the way we feel in our feeling states for so long. And the bridge I've always seen is the emotional world. So as we really get to know ourselves emotionally, and Ali, you really reflected that. It's like your emotional awareness of you, and how you're turning up and just being in that flow. It's so powerful. Like I can see it in you. It's like the power of being at ease with you, however you are, whatever emotion is coming up, that you can see it. And it's just like, I celebrate it. It's like, yes, it's great.
And it is. It's funny. We're all searching for something that's already here within us.
Yes.
It's really interesting. We live in a world that's trying to sell us everything, sell us all the solutions. Every ad on TV selling you a pill for every, well, I'm in the States, so it's off the wall. But because we don't have that at home, but so I'm always mesmerized here that they can even do that. But it's like James is like, absolutely. He's like, Mom, they're selling medication to you. I'm like, welcome to America. But no, this is not normal. But they're selling they're selling more disconnection, which is really interesting. It's like you feel disconnected. Here's something that's going to disconnect you even more. How exciting. And this is where, as a collective consciousness, which I do believe we're just about to reach this, because this is what you're talking about, Caroline, there are so many people emerging right now and coming forth. And we are in a time where conscious leadership is going to start rising, because we need conscious leadership. It's what the earth is calling for now. Things are shifting. Things are changing. They will never be the same again. People know something's wrong, and they're craving a deeper connection. And I think the powers that be keeping people away from each other for 2 years has actually backfired on them dramatically, because what people understand now more than ever is that they need each other. So their whole plan was to stop the Great Awakening and stop us kind of really realizing our true potential. And I'm like, actually, what you've created is a stronger desire in people.
Yeah, well, there's actually deeper connections have happened over the last 2 years than ever before. I think, people who are really aligned have actually got to meet globally, like we're sitting here now tonight. You know what I mean? From the, from that triangle from the States to Ireland down to Australia, like and back across, like it's happening, and it's happening because of the work that we've done over. Actually, it's funny how that 7 years has been the three of us. 21 sitting here.
Yeah. 7 is my number.
Yeah, and 3 is mine. So it's just been an absolute delight to have you. Thank you so much, Ali. And it just you're just a true example of the super modeling mum and the feminine force. And I would say definitely keep watching for enlightened leadership coming forward from Yali.
Yes, I think so too. Ali, it was so beautiful to meet you today. Really, really enjoyed your conversation and the sharing. The beautiful wisdom that you've shared is just like, it's going to set me up for a great day, because it's the beginning of my day here. So I'm like, yes.
Oh, good. Well, have an amazing day. Such a pleasure to spend time with both of you. Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed that. Thank you so much.
Amazing. We'll have you back on again, Ali. We'll be doing more talks. We'll definitely keep you in the loop. And Lisa, do you want to talk about what's happening tomorrow night before we go?
So yeah, we have our second date in the series of the Birthing the Diamond Mother. and we're going to find the diamond in the rough. So after this conversation, you might be very excited to find your diamond in the rough. We're going to talk about how we actually get in touch with that feminine force within us. And Carol and I have created this beautiful little 30-second punchy segment for you. Same time as this. You just need to register. The link is below. And once you register, you can watch the replay of the last session, and you're also in for the third date that's coming up as well, which is your unique diamond design.
Yeah, and we'll be talking a little bit about the program that we're launching around emotional education and creative thinking. That's going to be starting on the 1st and the 3rd of March, actually, on my birthday. And that's going to be a paid program that's going to unfold. We're going to be unboxing different teachings each month for the whole of the year. So if anybody wants to get involved in going on that journey with us and be supported by us, we'd love to have your company if you feel like you're resonate with us and what we have to say on the continued lives that we have leading up to that. So if you want to get involved in that, or just want to register for the free webinar, you're more than welcome. So we'll see you tomorrow night for anyone who's joining us live on the webinar. And thank you everybody for tuning in.
Thanks,
and
everybody.
Erin,
thanks for the comments.
Yeah, Erin's been there. Hi, Erin. Thanks so much for tuning in.
Karen, thank you, Karen and Julie. Lovely
Julie
to see you all.
and
How are
Adam.
you?
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Wonderful.
And wonderful. And blessings from Ireland, Alison. We miss you back home. So.
Bye, guys. Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.